Mass travel. Mass travel, likewise called mass transportation, or public transportation, the development of individuals inside metropolitan regions utilizing bunch travel innovations like transports and trains. The fundamental component of mass transportation is that many individuals are conveyed in a similar vehicle, e.g., transports, or assortment of connected vehicles, trains. This makes it conceivable to move individuals in a similar travel passage with more noteworthy effectiveness, which can prompt lower expenses to convey every individual or, on the grounds that the expenses are shared by many individuals, the chance to go through more cash to offer better assistance. Mass travel frameworks might be possessed by private, benefit-making organizations or by state-run administrations or semi-government offices that may not work for benefit. Regardless of whether public or private, many mass transportation administrations are sponsored in light of the fact that they can't take care of every one of their expenses from passengers charged to their riders. Such appropriations guarantee the accessibility of mass travel, which adds to making urban communities effective and positive spots in which to live. Individuals travel to address their issues, for resource, to go to work, to get food and fundamental administrations, for self-awareness, to go to class and social offices, and for amusement, to partake in or watch games, to visit companions. The requirement for movement is a determined need, since individuals seldom travel for movement itself, they travel to meet the essential necessities of day-to-day existence. Versatility is a fundamental element of metropolitan life, for it characterizes the capacity to take part in present-day culture. Explorers settle on level-headed decisions of the modes they use, each picking the one that serves the person in question best, albeit best might be seen contrastingly by every voyager. Transportation administrations in a city characterize the choices from which voyagers should pick, the exercises accessible to them, and the spots to which they can go. The transportation accessible to an individual is the aggregate consequence of government arrangements, the general interest for movement in the locale, contest among various modes, and the assets accessible to every person to purchase administrations. Metropolitan transportation benefits straightforwardly influence the person and nature of metropolitan life, which can vary among people who approach various types and measures of transportation administrations. Development in the 19th century. The historical backdrop of metropolitan mass transportation is initial an account of the development of innovation, from strolling, to riding creatures, to riding in bunches on vehicles pulled by creatures, and in the end to trolleys, bigger limit steam-fueled trains, electric trains, and engine tra. It is an account of step-by-step speeding up, vehicle limit, and scope of movement that has formed urban communities and organized the existences of the people who live in them. Beginning in New York City in 1832, administrators introduced rails in the roads to give a smooth roadbed both to the advantage of travelers and to limit the energy needed to pull the vehicles. The streetcar, a rail vehicle hauled by a long link pulled by steam power from a focal station, was designed in 1873 to dominate the precarious slopes of San Francisco. This thought spread to Chicago and different urban communities to keep away from the unsavory symptoms of ponies in thick metropolitan regions. The omnibus on rails, the streetcar, and in the long run steam and electric trains were restricted to procedure on fixed guideways, rails, and expanding the help required introducing more rails, an enormous and semi-permanent speculation. This firmness of a rail-based framework was adjusted by its low-moving opposition, which allowed the association of a few vehicles into trains where the interest for movement in the passageway was adequately high. Trains were proficient for conveying enormous quantities of explorers in light of the fact that a solitary guideway track could convey many trains every day, and the quantity of laborers didn't need to increment in relation to the quantity of vehicles. One motorman or architect could work a train W. In the 19th century, the rationale power for metropolitan mass transportation progressed to autonomous steam trains, which could pull numerous vehicles and consequently serve more occupied courses. Steam trains worked over longer distances than trolleys, and they were more solid and extensively quicker on the grounds that they didn't rely upon a solitary, delicate link. Starting in Berlin in 1879, steam was bit by bit supplanted by electric force, which was cleaner and calmer and allowed activity in boroughs so metropolitan rail travel could be set underneath roads and structures. This permitted development of new rail lines with negligible disturbance to existing structures, and it allowed mass transportation to work without a worry in the world regarding the blocked roads of 19th-century urban communities, which were regularly loaded up with creature-drawn vehicles, Isolating the option to proceed from other transportation modes and exercises of the city was imperative to the early and proceeded with achievement of mass travel. Vehicles working on restrictive guideways don't confront the deferrals and dangers of crashes experienced by vehicles working in blended rush-hour gridlock, and accordingly they can give quicker, more solid transportation. This has turned into an especially significant upper hand of rail travel since the approach of the car. A few urban communities, beginning with New York in 1868, developed raised rail travel lines to achieve a similar end. It was less exorbitant and risky to fabricate a rail line over the road on an iron and steel brace at the second-story level, as contrasted and burrowing a passage. It before long became clear, in any case, that the clamor of trains thundering by, the road checks of sections to help rail structures, and the dull regions made underneath these offices were excessive costs to pay for quick metropolitan travel. Urban communities and method for movement developed together, with the shape and degree of not set in stone to a great extent by the accessible vehicle innovation. Metropolitan transportation administrations characterized the geographic region where individuals worked, restricting how far one could make a trip to work, get food, trade administrations, and visit companions. When strolling or riding a pony was the essential method of metropolitan travel, urban communities were fundamentally little. At the point when bigger creature-drawn vehicles became normal, urban areas filled in degree. As innovation progressed, the speed of movement expanded from a normal counting station stops of 2 to 3 miles each hour, mile h for strolling, to 4 to 6 mile h for creature-attracted vehicles, to 15 to 20 mile h for steam trains, and urban communities developed along the passageways served by metro. Little, round towns connected along steam rail lines, which turned out to be progressively normal in metropolitan help among European and American urban areas in the last 50% of the 19th century. Homes and organizations were found near these lines, and especially near the stations, to utilize accessible transportation. Similarly, as transportation assisted with characterizing the geographic degree of the city by the plan of its lines and stations and its speed, the interest for movement by not really settled which transportation innovation could prevail in the commercial center. Higher thickness improvements, firmly divided houses and apartment complexes, multi-storied places of business, and huge manufacturing plants could uphold significant interests in elite guideway rail travel with incessant assistance. Lower thickness networks could support just rare assistance, with travel vehicles working in blended rush-hour gridlock on city roads. In the last part of the 1800s, it was normal for the land designer and the travel administrator to be very much the same, utilizing a road-rail route framework to advance the offer of new lodging and drawing in the inhabitants of that lodging to ride the railroad. The vehicle and mass transportation. In the created world, and especially the Western Hemisphere, the vehicle entered the transportation market as a toy for the rich toward the start of the 20th century. It turned out to be progressively famous in light of the fact that it gave voyagers significant new opportunities to visit various spots, while mass transportation served just fixed courses to make trips at any advantageous time, while mass transportation worked on a foreordained timetable, and accordingly, in Europe and North America the vehicle became mass transportation's central rival. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Life is Often if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.